So we're going to go through now the major steps here uh, to think about during your redesign project. So the first big consideration is really the structure and the platform. So the platform, meaning what is your website going to be actually built on, right? Is it going to be WordPress, Squarespace? Are you going to use, a page layout tool like Divi or Elementor? Or what is your site going to be built with? What's your donation platform? Things like that. And then structure, meaning how is your website structured? What is in the main navigation, the sub navigation? How do people navigate and find pages? So when we're doing a redesign project, we want to figure out the structure of the new site. We do what's called a sitemap. So the very first sort of deliverable, the first document we're creating for a redesign project is called a sitemap. And the sitemap, here's an example, and it shows a little key there with the legend. But a sitemap is basically a visual map, almost like an org chart of every page in your website. So starting with the home page, second layer is all the main navigation elements. So sometimes you want to include in this too different events and goals and CTAs. You can create little details for each pages, and you can help plan the user flow. How do people go from the home page to this page that's 3 layers deep, that's about a certain program or service you have? So the sitemap helps you plan that user flow, and it's incredibly important. And at this stage, since you haven't designed anything yet, you haven't started building anything, it's very easy to add and remove pages. Many times in this stage, people say, oh, we have these 2 pages, they're kind of similar, let's combine them. Or, oh, we have this 1 page in our sitemap and it's going to have to be really, really long. Maybe let's break that up into 2 pages. So the sitemap is a great step for figuring out what's the ideal structure. And of course, keep in mind your audience, your branding, and all those things and how you want to communicate. The structure of a website is very important. The next thing is really about the platform. It's the content management system. What are we going to, how are we going to manage this website? What are we going to build it in? So very important things about content management systems is consider the requirements. What do you require? Do you need to be able to build out new sections really easily? Do you need to be able to blog and have a news section? Do you need multimedia? What are your requirements? And then really think about how are other tools and platforms, if you say have a donation platform or an event scheduling platform or something else, how do the third-party tools, how are they going to connect and work with your CMS? Think about, do I have the staff to support the CMS? Can my staff learn it easily? Is there training out there? Things like that. And then absolutely avoid content management systems that are kind of on the decline, maybe ones that are outdated, or they're at end of life, or they're just becoming less and less popular. You definitely don't want to build a new website on a content management system that will be hard to get support for a year or 2 from now. So think about all those types of things. And more about the integrations. And this is something that, we use almost exclusively WordPress. That's kind of the platform we use. And one thing it's really good about is the integration. So since you're talking about planning a redesign, and we're going to assume most of this is full redesigns, most of these projects, this is a really good point to take a look at and evaluate your integrations, right? What are the platforms you're using? So here's a couple examples here of a recent redesign where this client used to have a donation button that left their site and went to a different platform. They also used to have events and a scheduling thing for their events. That was another platform that went off site. So during this redesign process, we decided, hey, we're going to be going with WordPress. Let's bring the calendar and events platform into your site. Let's redo the donation system so it lives right in your site. You don't have to leave your site. So the redesign process is a great time to look at that. What are the other tools we may be using where people have to kind of go to somewhere else? Can we bring that in-house? Can we make that part of our website? It just provides users a really good seamless experience. And mostly it's around donations, events, calendars, and multimedia and social content. That's usually the areas that we can create really good integrations. Another thing to plan well, people sometimes forget about this, is interactivity. So what is the interactivity? What are the interactive components? We figured out our structure, right, with our sitemap, but now are we going to have a chat? Are we going to have a form tool? Are we going to have pop-ups? You know, how is our CTAs going to work? What are the accessibility concerns we may have about some of these interactive components? Planning all that out is really important. Um, Sometimes people forget to do that. So we're going to talk more too about CTAs, about having your new site really perform. And by perform, we mean is the content and the design, is the site resonating with users? And is it causing the users to do kind of the actions you want, whether that's donations, many times it's donations, or becoming just aware of your mission, or volunteering, or, applying for services, all of those actions, right? So something that we've really noticed that during the redesign process, if people think a lot about the calls to actions and spend time planning that out, their redesigned site when it launches is oftentimes much, much more effective at driving action than the previous site. So here's an example here. Um, so things to thinking about, how you want to drive action, what are the goals, and how will you lead visitors down a path of, consuming your content and then doing specific actions. So this was a site, part of a redesign. This is part of a website. It was Emma Norton Services, and they have given us the feedback that their new site is incredibly effective at driving the actions they want. So part of the process for their redesign was mapping out CTAs and how we're going to, have people do actions. So what you're seeing here is some little widgets they can put at the bottom of pages. They can have this little video bar where it's, hey, are you new? Do you not know what we do? Watch this very short video. I think it's only about a minute, and it just goes right into what they do and what their impact is. And then they have a call to action donation widget there too. But instead of just one button, hey, just donate, or press this button and leave the site, go to some other donation platform. This little donation widget area is a very effective call to action because it lists right there what the amount of money can do. What is the amount of impact, say $100 has if you donate that. So that was a really powerful reframing of their calls to action and how that works. So this is another part of their site with more donation information, and you can scroll down and see all these different options, but they've got that orange donate button at the top of every page, but also that little bar that I previously showed they can put on any page. And it's just a really smart way to frame up that ask, the donation ask. So that's an example of really good call to action planning for a redesign. So I'm going to switch the poll here. So it looks like still the majority of you haven't solicited feedback about your website. I'm going to launch a poll here about CMSs. So thanks for answering the polls. It kind of helps guide the conversation. It's very useful. So we're going to talk now about the content. So planning the content for the redesign. So we did talk a little bit about how you want to, review your current content with Google Analytics and see those top entrance pages and how long people spend on pages, and kind of going through all that and the scroll depth with those other tools. So another thing to think about is kind of collecting your current content assets that you may want to use with the new redesign. Now, one thing for sure you do not want to do is you do not want to simply plan on copying and pasting from an old site to a new site. You really want to you don't want to do that. There may be small sections you can take verbatim here and there. But for one, your old content could have special HTML code in it you don't want brought over because it may not match the new website design and style. And you really don't want to just mindlessly copy and paste. You want to go through all your current site pages, even your print content, your blogs, figure out what is still relevant, what you want to keep. Even go through your current graphics and photos. Are there photos we can still use, or are they looking outdated? Should we take new photos? And don't forget about any premium content you have, meaning, say you maybe have a white paper, something people need to download. And, maybe your white papers and your case studies, maybe those kind of match the current site design, but if you redesign the site, they won't match anymore. So you may want to collect those content assets and think about updating them as well. Another thing that it does help a lot is to have a tool to use, some kind of content tool. And maybe it's something really simple like Google Drive or Dropbox. Or you could use something like Gather Content. This is just a picture of what one of the Gather Content interfaces looks like. And Gather Content is a great one. There's many out there, but having a content tool will really help, though. It will definitely help with the organization and keeping things moving. I will say that content is often the thing that takes clients longer than they think. So it takes them a lot longer than they think it's going to, and it can, hold up the launch of the site. So if you want to stay on budget, stay on time, don't think about content, later in the process. Think about it very early in the process. Also, this is just another tool. This is just a Google Drive folder, but I use Google Drive very heavily because I'm managing photo and video assets often in graphics. So, we did a redesign of Student Leadership Network's website, a phenomenal nonprofit that's going on, I think, 25 years now or something like that. And they use a lot of icons and a lot of symbols. So we had a great place to organize them in Google Drive to make sure during the redesign we're using the proper icons for different things. Another thing about content is make sure that you really define and align the new content for the new redesign, for the mission. If anything has changed, the branding or how you speak has changed, or you have a new font or new colors. And definitely, if you have done that persona work and updated any personas or goals, make sure the new content aligns with that. So one tool that we often use, and I'm going to show several worksheets, which will all be emailed to you. You'll have all that stuff in the follow-up email. But a couple worksheets that are useful. One is a page brief worksheet. So as you're planning new pages or kind of planning content on your redesigned site, the page brief worksheet is just handy. It keeps everything in one place. Your audience and your messaging and what's the value of this page? What are the actions people should take if they read this page? What are the SEO optimizations you want on the page? Things like that. So this worksheet there'll be a whole book of worksheets that it's a PDF. You can download and use these if you want. That'll be in the follow-up email. So the next step in planning your redesign is really the wireframe and layout. So the wireframe is the next step. So we already have our sitemap. We figured out the content, the major pages, and kind of started the page briefs and writing that. And then now we're going into wireframes. And one of the reasons why I talked about content so much earlier is it is very handy to know the content that's going to be on a page before you sit down to really design it and lay it out, right? If you do those tasks separately, sometimes you'll have this really great design and it looks nice, but then if you write the content later, you realize the design doesn't really support this amount of text well, or this amount of photos, so having that content, have a good idea of it first is helpful. So the wireframe is really like a skeleton. It's almost like an architectural drawing. There's no color. It's just the big blocks of where different components are going to go on the page. And you're usually not going to literally wireframe every single page on your website. That would be a lot of work. But what you're wireframing is those different layouts. Usually a website may have 4 to 6 kind of major layouts. Obviously, the home page looks different than an internal page, things like that. So you're going to wireframe the major pages. This is a fast iterative process. It goes very quickly. Here's a wireframe, a series of wireframes for redesign that deals with housing. And so this is the home page. And they have very distinct audiences. They kind of have home buyers, home owners, and then industry partners. So they are planning to speak to these 3 audiences very distinctly. So it comes through in the wireframes. So also another part of the wireframe is you don't want to just wireframe just simple content and pages, but if you're going to have critical interactivity in your site, if you're going to have forms people fill out or different tools they use on your site, planning out the interactivity is really important. You don't need to overdo it, plan every single step, but anything that's really important, it's helpful to keep the interactivity in your site consistent, and also to plan for mobile. How will a mobile user use the interactive components in a mobile environment versus desktop. So a good example of that, again, from the same website redesign project, was they were going to have a pop-up kind of search engine thing to find resources, local resources. So this is very important. It was going to be a tool that people came to their site to use a lot. So we wireframed out that process of how you search, and then what does the search results look like? How do you interact with the map? How do you filter? All those types of things. And this was a critical part of the website people were coming to. So we really focused these wireframes highly on the users, highly focused on the user experience. How can people come to this site and get what they need really easily? That was a big goal of the redesign. The old site had kind of the same information, but it was just very difficult to use.